Okay, guys, I think I'm live. I'm just double checking to see if I'm on. Okay, good. Hi, guys. I'm back again. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're doing well. I hope your week was good. I am back today to talk about how to get along during this pandemic. Essentially, how to come together on the same team, move into harmony, and, weather these crazy times together and do it in a harmonious way, because there's enough stress going on. And if you're not on the same team, it just makes it all the harder. So what I want to talk about today is just how this is showing up and the top ways that the stresses are showing up among couples, even who really already have a good relationship. And then I'm going to share 5 ways that you can come together and really simplify this process of eliminating conflict and getting on the same team going forward, because these are uncertain times and we really don't know how long this is going to last exactly. At least we don't in Minnesota. So what I think is so striking in all of this is there's a lot of changes, obviously, that we're going through, and there's a lot of things that are different, like the homeschooling and not being able to go to the gym or not being able to do the things we normally do. But couples are spending like twice as much time together as they used to, which is huge. And I don't have the statistics on that. Somebody probably does, but that's a lot of togetherness that people are not used to. And some couples are loving it. And my husband and I we are liking it for the most part. It's not so bad. But if this had come at a different time in our marriage, it would have been a disaster. So I really get why this is so triggering for a lot of couples. And it's probably why, the divorce rates went up like 20% in China after this pandemic. And a lot of people are saying that is correlated. And I think it's just because it's unnatural to be together in one place for so long. It's unnatural not to have an ebb and flow of comings and goings and space and togetherness. There's less privacy and space. There's no built-in time away. There's no mental freedom that you get when you're not interacting or in the energy or in the space of somebody all the time. And so if there's already problems, or you're already having resentments, or there's any conflicts at all, it festers and people tend to ruminate and just kind of vibe at a low level with each other all the time, because there's nowhere else to get a breather and process things. It's almost like your nervous system doesn't get a break. And like I said before, any problems, and this goes for all the positive aspects too. Things become magnified in a crisis, and the problems in a marriage become magnified in a crisis. And the cracks get bigger when there's more pressure put on it, right? And so the question is, how are you supposed to repair a crack? If there's already a crack there, how are you supposed to repair that when there's more pressure being put on it? And there isn't a way. There just isn't. The answer is you have to take the pressure off first. And so the question is how. And today I want to share, 5 things that you can do to get on the same team that you can apply in your own unique ways. These are sort of broad stroke solutions. And then you can think about specifically what that would look like for you. But this is what's working. This is really what's working. So take notes if you can, or listen to this again, because there will be a replay as well. Now, last week I talked about how in healing, I use the analogy of setting the bone. If you break a bone, you have to set the bone and you have to let it heal for a few weeks before you can put pressure on it. And one of the ways that you can set the bone in a marriage or in a relationship, so to speak, is really to let things heal before stretching and putting pressure on yourselves or putting pressure on the relationship, not tackling the long-standing issues, not tackling the hot button issues right now, which would be moving into growth area. You want to kind of just shore up the negative, keep the peace, and take a do no harm policy first. And the question really is how to do that, because it's not easy. There's a lot of anxiety, not only about homeschooling and job security and unemployment, if that's impacting you, stress about kids, how to deal with their stress, because now they're out of their routine as well, and they don't have their normal social outlets if they're social. And then parenting differences become extremely illuminated. It's easy to overlook those differences when you're tag teaming, but when you're together all the time and you're witnessing everything the other person is doing and you have a really different way of wanting to do things, that can make it really challenging. There's a lot of argument too for space, for time, for who sits where, when, who gets what room. distribution of duties, who's going to go shopping, how far to take the precautions. There's difference of opinions about all kinds of things that in your normal life you wouldn't have to figure out. There's enough things that we're navigating in our regular lives. So this just kind of, throws a learning curve on top of everything else. And like I said, there's no natural time apart, no place to get into a better headspace. And so things just get bigger. You become more clear about what the problems actually are. But there's so much pressure adjusting to the new normal that it feels like there's not enough mental space to actually deal with it. So you're simultaneously more acutely aware of the problems than you would be before. And you have even less resources to deal with it. And what ends up happening is people are getting depressed. Like one or both spouses are getting depressed. And I think that this, for a lot of people, it's activating people like a trauma in a way, because there's such a sense of powerlessness over such basic things like, obtaining things that you need for your household or certain supplies, or just where you're going, where you're allowed to go. And powerlessness is linked to depression, and so is fear. So if you're having the fear and you're having the powerlessness, your psyche is responding almost like it's a trauma, and they'll either get really agitated with a short fuse, or they'll just start to shut down and people will start to sleep more, and all the symptoms of depression, right? But it's not just low mood, and it's not just like, are you sleeping more? Are you sleeping less? It impacts the relationship, because along with depression comes negative thinking and cognitive distortions, where you start to filter your history and you start to look at things in a skewed way, and you get really overwhelmed. And when you're full of negative thoughts all day long, it's really hard to maintain a soft, open emotional connection with your spouse. And so if you don't have that emotional connection, it's pretty much impossible to solve problems together, to communicate effectively, or to get onto the same team and move into unity, which is actually really advanced. So when this is going on, how do you get along? How do you do this, right? You want to get on the same team so that you can bring your energies together. When you're working against each other, it's an energy drain, right? And you're not going to get as far. You can get so much farther if you're working together, in creating like a positive direction and momentum of your shared energetic resources, because all the time that you would have spent stewing or irritated or arguing is now being spent on creating something, or at least just peacefully coexisting until this passes. And that is a really big goal for a lot of people right now. So here's what I suggest. First, and I know this sounds really obvious, you have to set your intention to do so. You have to set your intention to get along. It sounds really overly simplified, but if you don't have to know how to do it yet, but you have to decide that's your goal, and you're committed to finding out how to do that. You're committed to having that be top of mind. You're committed to having that on your radar and looking for opportunities that you can just get along. What does that mean? How do you show up as someone who is easy to get along with? And there's some things I'm going to give you some specific things on how to do that in terms of your more advanced mindset. But you want to ask, how do I show up to create that? And try to remember what you love about your spouse. That helps a lot. When you are thinking, I want to get along with this person because I chose this person, because I love this person. This person has good qualities, even if we have a difference of opinion, even if there's things that drive you crazy. Spend more time expanding your awareness of the things to be grateful for, of the things that are going well, the things that you might be taking for granted that you aren't arguing about, that a lot of people might be arguing about, right? Recommit to that every morning and just set your intention. I'm going to get along with my spouse today. And just one day at a time. And if you set your intention in the morning with that, you'll be amazed at how many opportunities you have where you might have reacted in an old way, where you're not going to go down that road that might lead to greater conflict. I hope I'm still on. I look like I froze. Okay, good. So the second thing is, first set your intention. And then the second thing is to let go of positionality, is what I always say. Let go of your position. Move into the us consciousness. And this is more advanced. It is not easy to do that. Especially when you have problems and you're in crisis, especially if you have difference of opinion, because automatically when we have a difference of opinion, we tend to think me versus you. I want this, they want that, and I have to convince them, or they're trying to convince me. And you're like this, me versus you, because you're stuck in a position. But if you can move into the us place, you are recognizing that what impacts your spouse impacts you too. So then you have a stake in them getting what they need just as much as you getting what you need. And so you take it on as your own. It's not me versus you. And so if you're not in that headspace, you're not really arguing with your spouse. You're not trying to deconstruct their reasons for wanting something the way they want it. You're not trying to argue with the premise of their feelings. You're just taking it at face value. And then you're saying, and here's what I believe, and here's what I'd like to do. But you're not saying, but this. You're saying this and this. So it's a subtle shift, but it's super powerful. It's like, you don't have to make them wrong. You can say, okay, it looks like we want different things. Like, you want X, I accept that without judgment. I want Y, and you're going to accept that without judgment. Now what? Given that, that's where the magic happens. Given that, you have to accept it. There's no arguing and hating on them for having their feelings or their wishes or their requests. You just say, all right, if this is really important and that is just what it is, and that is what it is for me too. Now, how can we come together in such a way that works for both of us? And only then, when you shift your paradigm, do you all of a sudden have options available to you. You start to get creative solutions that you never would have thought of because you were in one paradigm, and you have to get out of that paradigm to even see what the possibilities are. And at first it feels really impossible. And you're like, you ask that question, now what? Okay, how do we find something that works for both of us? You might think you can't find the answer, and you might not find the answer in the first conversation. But if you commit to finding the answer and trusting that you will find a way to compromise, you will. You just will. You might find that the stakes are higher for one spouse than the other, and one's willing to concede because they have goodwill now with you. There's goodwill in the us place, and in that us consciousness, there's so much goodwill between you that you trust. Like, I can give that. I can take one for the team because they're going to do the same for me too. And so that's really, really important. And it's not even something that I can, tell you it all boils down to this one technique. There's a lot of techniques that would support that, but the most bang for your buck is really in having that as your frame around things. And if you're asking questions through that frame, you will be fine. That's really the trick. You have to keep reminding yourself, though. It's easy to slip back into the old ways. Another way of looking at this us consciousness is if you just take a step back and imagine, okay, I'm here. You imagine like you're a fly on the wall, or you've got a wide lens on your camera, and you're just going to pan out, and now you can see the whole room, and now you can see both of you, and you're like a third party looking in, and you're going to mediate from that position. It's like changing your vantage point to a higher vantage point, or a vantage point that is somewhere in between the two of you, because that changes everything. That's just a metaphor. I always think of a camera and panning out when I feel stuck in my position. The third thing you can do is to nurture your spouse, right? Because from the us place, you know that when you nurture your spouse, you're really nurturing the relationship, because when they feel good, you're going to benefit from that. If you do what they need to thrive, or if you know what they need to thrive, you could ask yourself, what can I do to help them get that? If they're thriving, the marriage does better, then you thrive. And it really is like this biosphere between you. It's like the air between you becomes cleaner, and you recognize that you're not losing anything. If you can nurture, plus if you do it just from a place of love one day at a time, it's hard, but just saying today is just today. And whatever resentments I have about the last 10 years that are now getting triggered today, I'm going to table that until we're not putting pressure on the crack of our relationship in this strange time. Use a journal, capture it, put it aside, know that you'll get to it when you're in a better, stronger place, when there's been more healing, when you have finally reconnected and you are in a place of harmony, then you can tackle those things. So you really want to pick your battles in that too. But nurturing your spouse could be like anything. It could be if they're stressed out and you just want to let them sleep in longer, or draw a bath for them, or rub their feet if that's what they like, or you know what they like, right? Things that they've been asking for, something that makes them feel cared for, even if it's not something that you would want, if it's something you know, because you probably have heard of love languages. Find the love language of your spouse and try to give that as much as you can. Then the fourth thing is you want to let go of anything that feels important only because it's a power struggle or because it's loaded based on the past. And so now just one little thing is feeling super important because it's linked with this whole other thing. And that's kind of what I was alluding to before. If it's the principle of the matter, let it go. Write down what's at stake for you and then know that you'll deal with it later when the healing has occurred. But try to let go of anything that only feels important because of the past or because it's a power struggle or because there's some larger principle at stake. Usually that's connected with ego, not all the time, but usually. So think about that and go, what can I let go of right now? It's so easy to see something in the moment through the lenses of past transgressions and any of the meanings that you've made out of it and the old story of the challenges that you've had. So you want to try to have a beginner's mind, clean the slate and just say, today's a new day. How would this look to me if I knew nothing about this person? If I was beaming in, like if I had amnesia and I was now in this situation, what would I think is happening? And it might look really different to you from a beginner's mind than it does through the lenses of the past. So this is a great opportunity to just stay in the moment and take it one day at a time. And some of the skills that you learn in a crisis like this, those are the skills that will serve you later too in the relationship. Because during that time where you are tabling and you're finding ways to connect and get on the same team in spite of unresolved issues, that's really the predictor of success in a marriage anyway. You know, Dr. John Gottman did that research. If you know his stuff, he talks about the predictors of success and the predictors of failure in marriage. And long-term successful marriages all have unresolved issues. Not one couple that was successfully and happily married. They were happily married. Like they would say, I wouldn't change a thing. You know, I'm happily married. But they had things that never got resolved. And the reason why is because they were just different people and they still had different opinions and that never changed. But the number of positive interactions that they had far outweighed those things that felt like negative, points of contention. And so it's not about getting rid of the negative in order to feel like you can connect. It's about expanding on the positive and just letting the negative be there. If it's been there for 10 years, it can be there for another 6 weeks, right? Practice that muscle of finding ways to table something and say, but in this moment, can I find love for this person? In this moment, can we just be here now and find a way to navigate this together or at least eliminate any tensions between us? And then finally, try to look for, and this is sort of piggybacking on what I just said and expanding the positive, look for those positive interactions. I talk about connection. Look for connection once a day at least. Like in the morning, can you have a hug every morning? Can you have your coffee together in the morning before the kids get up? Can you face the day together and talk about what's ahead and just share? Can you connect at the end of the day? Whatever is good for you guys, just talking or laughing, right? Sharing something funny with each other. What is a positive interaction for you? And also even looking together, like what went better today than it did yesterday? What are we getting better at? What went well in spite of it being a shit show today? Like you can together look for the positive things and that unifies you. When you can together say, I noticed you did that really well, even though that was stressful, or I noticed today wasn't as bad as yesterday. And you share that from the us place. It's an invitation. It's a bid for connection. It puts you together, psychologically and emotionally. And then you can also just do the nonverbal connection, the really primal connection that signals safety, touching each other. That's what the hug is, or just even being in each other's physical presence and signaling that you're attuned. You're looking at them, you're tuned into them. They can tell that you would be able to get a read on them, and that creates safety. As a biological organism, we need to have that kind of attunement. So as you get distracted with trying to manage your own singular autonomous life within the system of your family and extended family, think, as a pack in the sense of like you guys are leaders of the pack. And even if you don't have kids or if you don't have kids at home, approaching life with that mentality is a game changer. So that's basically it. Those are the 5 things. Those are the top 5 things. There's more things that you can do, but most things will fall under this when you think about nurturing your spouse or finding ways to connect every single day and what you can let go of. There's a lot that falls under that category. So think about what those things would be for you. How can you remind yourself of your intention every day? How can you simplify it in your own mind? What can you do to let go of your position on something? I'm not saying let go of your life dreams or like really important things. Like there might be bottom lines and boundaries that you have, and you shouldn't, let go of your boundaries. That's not what I'm saying. But there might be some things where it's not a boundary issue. It's not a deal breaker. It's not a safety issue. It's not a high stakes thing. It's just super annoying. Maybe that could be something that you could yield on. And when you do a little of that, over time, usually what happens 90% of the time is your spouse picks up on that, and then that builds goodwill, and they start doing that for you too. So you just start showing up as the person who's 100% responsible for the culture in your marriage. If you thought you were 100% responsible for the culture in your marriage, how would you show up? Setting your intention for that every single day. What can you let go of? What can you do to nurture your spouse and signal, hey, we're in this together? And what can you do to expand the positive connections and connect with each other, either non-verbally or doing something fun, creating ceremony out of these strange times, finding the silver linings and I don't know, dancing or FaceTiming people or watching a movie or something like that. Or maybe you're sick of watching movies, but going on a nature hike, whatever it is for you, think about it. Really take the time to write down what would you do for each of these 5 steps and start living them and start tracking how many more times throughout the day you're feeling pretty good, and the positivity in your marriage will expand so much. Then when the crisis is over, you can always go back to some of these larger hot button issues. So that's it for today, you guys. If you have any questions, I'm just going to double check and see if you have any questions live. I'm not sure if there are or not. Hang on one second. Yes, thank you. Yes, I hope that they do. Yes, but there's no questions, so I'm not going to waste anybody's time right now, but I will go through the questions later on. So if you're listening to this later, not live, go ahead. Or if you're watching it live and you think of it later, put it in the comments. I will go through them. And if you're looking for support, if you need clarity, if you want to know how to apply these principles to your unique relationship and you need some traction right now, then definitely book a call with me. It's a free call. It's at monikahoyt.com/talk. And I'll just look at what's not working, where the problem areas are. What is the stuff that needs to be tabled? What is the stuff that can be dealt with? And, distinguishing between the most important things that have to be dealt with versus the things that could be let go of. Essentially creating a crisis plan. Looking at the steps for now, what would work to get you to the next phase. That's what we would do. So book a call if that's of interest to you. And then if there's anybody that you think could benefit from this talk, go ahead and add them to the Facebook group. All you have to do is just add them on the right-hand side. I think you can add, and then it will go in, and I still have to accept them, but I'll see that a group member recommended them. So feel free to add people. Any tips for a single person? Well, I think that's a great question. I think this was specifically for couples, but I think the idea of setting your intentions every morning still apply here. And being able to shift your paradigm and look at things as, I'm about healing right now. I'm about stabilizing. I'm about staying in status quo and not putting too much pressure on something that's already stressed, and distinguishing between, and you might want to listen to my talk from last week as well, where I go into that metaphor a little bit more about how we oftentimes want to move into growth and go for our big dreams and visions during a time where first there just needs to be healing. First there just needs to be no further injury. Now we just need to set the bone, let it heal. When a bone is healing, you can't move it around. You can't do the things that you used to do. So you just are very tender with it. You're taking it really easy until the cast comes off, and then you can put pressure on it. So I think those principles still apply in the sense that you're going to let go of the stuff that you can wait to think about in the future and just think, what's going to nurture me? What's going to bring me healing? What's going to make me feel good right now? And what's going to eliminate the negativity? And trying to put a different frame around things, looking for the positive things that are going well in your life, or the things that you might be taking for granted. That applies for single people too. That applies for everyone, no matter what the status of their relationship is. It's just that there's something exponential that happens in a relationship because it's contagious, right? But if you're dating anyone or even have extended family members that you're interacting with on a regular basis, people will feel that. And I think the negativity is really contagious right now. The fear and the anxiety is really contagious right now. But so is the positivity that I'm seeing from people that are really protecting themselves from too much media, too much news, too many stories about negative things, not enough stories to balance out about the positive things that are happening, the people that are recovering. It's really just a matter of what lens are you putting on and choosing where you focus your attention. And choosing where you focus your attention dramatically affects how you feel and the thoughts that you're having, right? And then the thoughts that you're having, as they become more positive, then in turn make you feel better. So it's the better you feel, the better you feel. The better it gets, the better it gets. And so it's contagious in that way too, with anyone that you come in contact with. And it's like a ripple out effect. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people take this opportunity to tune into what's going really well. Why is this a good time to do some things that I've been putting off? I always thought it was, there's not enough time, because there were a lot of things I was going to do if I had time. And now that I'm not driving my kids all over the place and I don't have all these other things that I was out of the house for before that I technically have time to do now, I'm not doing them. So what is it really? It's not really the time. It's that I haven't made it a priority. So I think that it's a really great opportunity to use this as an opportunity, or use it as a leverage point or a turning point, a time to pivot and get conscious and clear to create something that you want for yourself, even if you're not in a marriage. So I hope that answers your question. I'm going to double check and see where your comment is. Sorry, I'm using a new platform and I'm trying to figure out where the comment is. All right, let me know if you have any more questions on that, and I will definitely circle back. And like I said, book a call if you want support at monikahoyt.com/talk. And I hope you guys have an awesome weekend, and I'll be back next week. Talk to you soon.